Since the outbreak of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, the UN system agencies have been actively involved in the response to this epidemic. But it was quickly realized that the UN staff and their family members also needed to be focused upon as a particular group in the fight against the epidemic. It is in this regard that I note with satisfaction the introduction of the UN CARES and the UN Plus initiatives by the UN Secretary General to allow the UN staff and their dependents to have access to critical information about HIV/AIDS, prevention services, as well as care.
The HIV epidemic is global. Despite decreases in new HIV infections and AIDS-related deaths in some countries and regions, HIV within sub-Saharan Africa remains a major issue, especially the Eastern and Southern Africa region. In this context, women bear the higher burden of the epidemic than men. Also of concern is new infections amongst adolescents and young populations. Therefore, it is important that everybody take responsibility for the AIDS response in order to ensure that we end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030.
In Rwanda, young women and adolescent girls are disproportionately more affected by HIV than male counterparts. Therefore, at UN CARES and among all heads of agencies, we advocate for all young people and adolescents in our families to have access to the appropriate information, to have access to comprehensive sexuality education, and if needed, they have access to condoms and to all services that help them protect themselves.
There's been excellent progress on the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV in Rwanda. However, new HIV infections among adolescents are increasing. We therefore need to renew our commitment to accelerate both awareness and prevention of HIV among adolescents. And in addition, access to services must also be increased. Our efforts to strengthen HIV prevention during adolescence will safeguard our success to date. And we, as part of the UN family in Rwanda, are very much committed to continuing our efforts in these important areas.
So to the UN staff members in Rwanda and their dependents, when we screen, we know our status, whether we are positive for any of the viruses or not. And when we are positive, we can take the appropriate action so that we do not go to the long-term complications. Importantly as well, we need to try as much as possible to avoid the risk factors. This is transmitted via the blood and other body fluids, so please let us screen and let us ensure that we get treatment if we have the disease.
Despite the fact that there is no permanent cure for HIV infection, treatment exists to enable persons living with HIV live healthily for many years. The UN Clinic in Rwanda provides dedicated services for HIV prevention and support to UN personnel and dependents living with HIV. So get tested. Know your HIV status. It is important.
HIV status doesn't matter in the workplace because there is a group of staff living with HIV called UN Plus. In that group, advocate for the rights of staff living with HIV and support each other to live positively. So, as HIV is not transmitted by a casual contact, there should not be any reason to be stigmatized for being HIV positive in the workplace.
During this period, we are encouraging the UN personnel to have an HIV test. Having an HIV test might be challenging but you have to go through it. Knowing your HIV status helps us to take the right decisions. The UN Cares UN team is committed to support you to access information and services. Thank you.